Hello, everybody. Thank you for watching the podcast. Tell me your story. Today's special guest to tell her story is Miss Myesha Watkins, right? That's how you say it?
Myesha. You call me
Myesha.
Yeah.
Myesha Watkins. But I just want to say before we get started, it is truly an honor just to have you on the platform just to tell your story. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for the invite. I'm looking forward to having this conversation.
So we're just going to basically start like how we usually do, just from the very beginning. Talk about your childhood. Where'd you grow up at?
So I grew up in inner city Cleveland. I grew up in a neighborhood, the St. Clair, Glenville community. So Eddy Road, if you're familiar with Cleveland, Ohio. Yeah, that's where I grew up. Then I moved to the West Side when I was in 7th grade.
So what was it like growing up in Cleveland, Ohio?
It was pretty dope. You know, as an adult, I see all the challenges that were there. But as a young person, I thought it was cool. Like I grew up with my cousins, like my community friends, water gun fights, playing with the fire hydrant, going to the corner store, all the fun stuff, right? So it was cool growing up in the city.
Now, for the people that are watching, is this before technology kind of took over, or is this what's going on?
Absolutely. The street lights was the determining factor on what time we had to come inside. So definitely a lot of hand games, hide go seek, street ball, basketball with the crates, hula hoop, jump ropes, all the things that allows your parents to say you smell like outside and go take a shower.
Oh, the good old days before technology and phones took over. Back when it was just a house phone, a cord phone.
Arguing over who's going to use the house phone. Those were the days.
And then at one point, I think it was AOL. We had AOL that came into play, and you actually had to sign off the internet in order to use the phone.
Back in the day.
So for the kids that are watching, you don't know nothing about that life.
When things were simple.
But now...
simple, but a very heated space for your siblings
Oh, yeah.
You were
felt so
online.
Good.
So
it felt so good back in those days. It kind of feels like a movie anymore when I talk about it.
Yeah.
So what was it like? You know, were you just out there all the time? What kind of games were you guys playing?
So I was legit like just a regular community kid, like always outside playing hopscotch, playing in the dirt, running around the community, taking long bike rides, having sleepovers with my cousins, like staying on the porch, listening to people argue in the community, being in grown folks' business, how my mother used to put it. But literally, like not being exposed to all of the community conditions that grown-ups had to deal with, really just being a kid. So that's the part of my childhood that I'm the most grateful for. And also it's the part that I'm hurting with for the children of these days because they don't have that opportunity to just be a kid.
Yeah. And I mean, I just think back to like being out there playing sports, playing kickball. I mean, playing freeze tag. We had a game called, I don't know if you're familiar with it. We had a game called like Manhunt.
I do. So that's kind of like, is that kind of like,
It's like a hide and seek / freeze tag, but all that like combined together. It was a fun game because you would venture out through the entire neighborhood.
Yes, I remember.
I think it was like 3 people were the people that would have to come after you. Like they had teams, and I remember just being up in trees, hiding in the most random places.
Yeah,
and it would be hours sometimes before we found certain people.
Yeah,
certain friends, but.
It's so crazy because oftentimes I don't get a chance to reflect often on my childhood, especially like the fun parts, because people, when you tell them where you grew up, they want to know like, well, how did you survive that? Or like, what do you mean? Like I read headlines to say that your childhood couldn't have been like that. But I legit had a really cool childhood. There were some moments that I was like, "Oh, this is what grown-ups gotta think about," but more often than not, I was really able to just be a kid and be a dirty community kid with my cousins and having fun.
Come home with grass stained pants,
Yeah,
muddy all the way from head to toe.
see, you get it.
I remember at one point during the childhood, I didn't wear shoes. I mean, I remember going around just coming home. My foot would be completely black from being on the tops, man, just running up and down the streets.
Hmm. I remember that. My grandmother used to tell me, "You better put some shoes on. You're gonna get bugs in your body." And I used to think like, "How am I gonna get bugs?" And she was like, "The bugs gonna enter through your feet, and you're gonna get." And I used to be like, and I never thought it was any truth to it. Still to this day, but it was something. It will be something that I'll tell my kids like, make sure you put your shoes on. You're gonna get bugs in your body. Just passing down lies.
Well, to me, I learned my lesson because running through the grass one time, the bottom of my foot was hurting like crazy. I was like wondering what was happening, and it turned out that I ended up getting like a baby cactus in the middle of my foot. From
Mm.
and then that was like the last time I ran around barefoot because getting some tweezers put into the middle of your foot and
Oh.
trying to pulling that all out, it hurt, man. It's like
Mm.
having a piece of glass. It was 10 times worse
Yeah.
when it's deep in there. I was like,
Mm.
nope, never again. I'm wearing shoes. I learned my lessons. Nope, never again.
Yeah, that's the way to learn it.
But okay, so other than your childhood, what was your schooling like in the city?
So I tell this part often. I probably went to like 15 different grade schools from like K to seventh grade. When I was younger, I moved a lot. And oftentimes I would move from street to street or neighborhood to neighborhood. Some schools I would transfer from and go right back depending on where we moved in the community. Um, so school was really challenging for me because I don't really have any friends from grade school. But when I went to high school, I made a decision that I told my mom, I'm not transferring school. So like I'll just catch however many buses I have to because like I want to stay here. So between high school and college are the only schools that I've ever been to consistently to graduate from. But other than that, I went to 15 different schools in the city of Cleveland.
What was that like though? Going from 15 different schools. I mean, was it hard getting friends, or did you have friends all over the place, left and right?
So like I don't like I've always been social. So it's kind of like I always had friends. I just was never able to sustain those relationships. And because I went to so many different schools, I meet people in my adult life and they're asking me like, well, did you go to this school? And my response is always like, I probably did. Like, I don't really remember the names of my grade schools because I went to too many schools. But um, so I don't really, again, like how people say, we've been friends since kindergarten. Like my story started from ninth grade. And it's like, yo, this has been my homegirl since ninth grade. So
So being that happened, I mean, did you play sports? Were you able to get active in anything during that time
yeah,
period?
in high school, I played basketball. I ran track. Um, I tried to do drill team, but I smiled way too much, and I just couldn't stay serious. Um, but it was in high school when I finally was able to get the experience of what it feels like consistently go through a school. I think when I was younger, it really didn't phase me because it was like a routine. Like we'll move from out of our house or apartment, and then we'll go to a new school. And then when we came back, it was all love because my teachers by this time they probably were like, "Oh, I know Myesha will be back next year." Like so, Cleveland, if you don't know, it's a very transient community. Um, there's not a lot of housing stability, whether it's landlords or whatever the case may have been. But kids in my situation, similar to my situation, they move from community to community to school often. Not saying that it's right, but I didn't see a problem with it when I was a kid until I became a social worker and they were like, to diagnose people with a mental health disability, one of the questions is how many schools you went to. If you went to so many schools, then you're at greater risk for having a mental health or a behavioral health problem. And I was just like, why is this a determining factor? But for all the reasons why it could be, I just never thought that it would be on an assessment. So
Break it down a little bit for people that are not used to being in the city.
yeah.
And like, how is it to get to school? Are you taking a school bus? Are you taking a city bus? What's going on? Break that down a little bit for the
Okay.
audience. That way they can understand better.
So it's several ways depending. You have like your neighborhood schools. For me, when I was younger, I always caught a ride. Like my mom would always drop us off at school. There was this one time when I thought that I was old enough to walk home in a blizzard, a snowstorm, and I got lost. And I really wasn't lost. I was just around the corner, but I've never had to like walk. So I was stuck at this other school, and my mom ended up coming to get me, and I was so afraid. I think I probably was like in third grade. But until I went to high school catching a bus, and that's because we lived in East Cleveland at the time, which is a small neighboring suburb of Cleveland. And my school's on the west side of Cleveland. I graduated from John Marshall, so I would have to catch rapids. I would catch a bus to a rapid and take that rapid to another bus and then walk down 10 blocks to get to school. But I was just really committed to graduating from the school that I started at. But similar to that, you know, depending on the community safety or lack thereof in some cities in Cleveland, a lot of parents drop their kids off, and now they have the luxury of getting Ubers or Lyfts. But I had to take public transportation or get dropped off by my mom. But there's so many ways. A lot of kids walk, and unfortunately, a lot of our communities aren't the most safe. So there's many risks that may happen on that commute to school. But I'm grateful that my mother did have transportation to be able to take me to school.
Yeah, and like you said, kids got it made nowadays, where you have
Yeah.
the option to get Uber.
I wish I would have
Lyft.
told my mother, like, can you give me an Uber to school? She'll be like, girl, if you don't get on the bus. One cool thing is that my children, I drive them to school. And one day my daughter asked me, she was like, can we get on a rapid? And I was like, you asking to get on the bus? And she was like, yeah. And then I had to like step back into my childhood and say, I was excited to get on the bus when I was a kid. It gave me like freedom. You get to, you know, see your friends acting, you know, appropriate or inappropriate on the bus. It was like, it was a part of the culture. So I gave my daughters that experience and they loved it. We just took the rapid to no destination and got back on and went back to our car. But sometimes you just got to go back into the things that was a really good moment in your childhood and let your children experience it.
See, I didn't really get to experience that until after I left, got out of high school and started going to like the city, because where I'm from is the small town of Sandusky, Ohio. And, you know, it's the school buses and you can pretty much walk anywhere in the town.
Yeah.
But once I got to like Pittsburgh and Cleveland and started riding the city buses, I truly got to feel like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
This is cool. And, you know, I didn't really think about it until like I started doing this and listening to everybody's stories. Like, this is just your guys' way of life. That's how you guys get around.
And for many people, you know, they don't have the luxury to not take public transportation. Depending on where you live, I was in one conference and they were sharing that imagine if transportation was your only option, you have to account for maybe like 2 hours before wherever you're going, 2 hours after, depending on the schedule. And then if that bus, you miss the bus, then you may not be able to make it to school or to work or to your other, you know, commitments. And that puts a lot of people behind. So in Cleveland, they're trying to make a 5-minute walk city where you can walk 5 to 10 minutes wherever you have to go to reduce that barrier. But yeah, transportation it's an experience for sure.
So how long was it before you were in high school that you knew what you wanted to do with life?
So I didn't know. So I'm like the second person back then. I was the second person to only graduate from high school in my family. So I knew the goal was to graduate high school because I had to. The pressure was on me. My late aunt Michelle, who's no longer here with us, she was the first person. And then it was me. And it was important for me, and it was passed down to say, whatever you do, you got to graduate from high school. So like, that's all that I knew that I wanted to do. Like I had to do this. It wasn't a choice. And I think I applied to Cleveland State University probably like 3 weeks before it was time to start the semester, because how Cleveland is a big city and also a small city. I didn't even know that Cleveland State University was accessible. Like I didn't know that it was right there in the heart of the city until someone told me, "You just go to Cleveland State,"
Yeah.
and I liked it. But I didn't know for a very long time that I wanted to go to college. I just knew I had to graduate from high school.
And I mean, just Cleveland State being there, I was kind of the same way. Like towards the end, like once I got out of high school, graduated, I didn't really know what I wanted to do right away. So I ended up traveling. I guess ended up going places, get on like the Amtrak train, just kind of getting a feel for the world.
That's
But
dope.
I really
I've never been on a train.
wasn't decided what I wanted to do. But I took the Amtrak train and just kind of ventured out for a while. And like I said, I was touching on a little bit. I started going to like Pittsburgh, Cleveland. I've been to 32 different states. I went to North Carolina, South Carolina. No, for the people that are watching, I'm not a runaway. I was just kind of getting because a lot of train conductors thought that when I was like, because I was 17 when I graduated, but they thought that because I looked younger, and they were like, "Are you a runaway? Are you trying to run away from home?" I'm like, "No, I just want to see the world. I just want to get out here and see what's out here, what's happening."
That's pretty cool.
And as I was out there, I mean, that's when it really came into play for me what I wanted to do with my life, because I didn't understand that I had a unique gift where I could just open up and talk to people, and people could just talk to me. And kind of what was happening is when I was on the train, people would open up to me and they would start telling me about their life stories. And I didn't really think nothing of it. I was just, okay, it's just, people talking just to kill the time. I didn't think nothing of it until like as I sat back, because I would write about like my adventures and people who I came across and was talking to, so I could remember it later down the line. And as I would reflect on those stories, it really hit me as like, hey, wait, I got something going on here. People are, opening up to me more. And after I got done traveling and whatnot, I kind of faded away from it. Didn't think about it. I went to school at the University of Toledo, and I got my associates in journalism because I was like, okay, I like to write. This is what I want to do with my calling. So I graduated, and I did that for a little bit. Started, working in the journalism field, and then I kind of faded from it. Started getting back into the warehouse because I wanted to take a break, and then I forgot about the gift and kind of just started living life again, just normally. Before you know it, it started happening again. People I was working with were, opening up and telling their stories, and then it wasn't until I started I was doing DoorDash. And as I was doing DoorDash, I was delivering to people. And once again, people were telling me their stories, opening up. And then that's pretty much where the idea for this podcast that we're currently on came to. I was like, that's a great idea. I should actually, because I was telling so many people about the stories I've heard. But I was like, what better way to open a platform for people like you to come on here and tell your story? And that's where we're at now.
That is so dope. Congratulations to you for noticing your gift and your calling, and it always finds its way back to us no matter what we try to do. So shout out to you for creating this space.
And I've met so many cool people along the way. Just heard so many stories, and I'm just hearing your story get me all excited. So back to your story. So there you are. You're finishing your high school career. What was next? What was happening next?
So then I went to college. Went to Cleveland State University. First person in my family to go to college. So that transition was crazy. I think I was on academic probation my first year. And I remember my mom calling saying like, yo, that's and my GPA was so low. And I remember like just being so afraid, like I can't get kicked out of college. Like my family is dependent on me to lay the foundation that education is important. I got to figure this out. I literally got to figure it out. So I started to figure out whatever seriousness looked like for a college student. I was like, okay, I know that there's all these resources. Like I need to figure out who do I need to talk to. So I went to get help, and I was like, yo, what do I need to do? So they put me on Like you get a plan if you're on academic probation to change it around. And I went to talk to my professors, and they were just like, Watkins, like, I see the potential in you, but you're playing too much. Like, you're coming to class late. You're not doing well. I want the best for you. So how can we help? And then I think it was in that moment where it was just like, yo, college is bigger than me. Like, I got to figure this out because I need my family, both young and old, to know that education is something that we can attain. Like, we can go to school. We like, it's important for us to do this. And I knew that I would be a mother one day. I said, I want my children to be able to say, my mother went to college. My mother graduated from high school. Like, I understand the importance of education. And so now that I am a mom, those days when I was at Cleveland State struggling and crying and not knowing, it makes me proud to know. And since then, I have 7 cousins graduated from high school. I have one cousin that graduated from college. I have another cousin that's in college. I had 3 cousins that went to the Air Force. So like all of that time when I was in college, doubting myself and being afraid, I'm standing in like an answered prayer because those who are younger and older than me are now going to college and doing things where the story is different. But I think my greatest accomplishment, which I didn't share, is my mother had me at age 16. And she chose motherhood over childhood. And she also dropped out of high school. So at 50, my mother got her GED, and she's a student at Cuyahoga County Community College. And when I tell you, like, no matter what I accomplish in life, my greatest and most proud moment is that my mother was able to go back to school and get her GED, and now she's a college student. So I'm just really grateful for that. So even in that moment, being able to say all of those moments in undergrad and graduate school was worth it because my mother, who chose to have me at 16, went back and finally picked back up what she dropped down in order to be a mom. So,
but not only that, but what was cool is you set the standard for your family. You know, you did it for yourself, graduated, and then it started something for everybody else. Everybody else, your cousins, everybody got involved into it. They're like, hey, we can look up to her because she did it.
Yeah.
And now your kids will forever, you know, they have no excuse. They're like, yeah, mom went to college, she finished, she graduated. Now it's up to us to keep the legacy going.
Absolutely.
And how does it feel knowing that your mom, like you said, she was a young mom, started off, didn't get finished high school, but got back and got her GED.
Yeah.
Now she's in college.
Yeah.
How does it feel?
I feel like a proud mom. You know, I oftentimes tell anybody who's willing to listen is that since my mom had me so young, we kind of grew up together. And sometimes I allow her to be the mom, and sometimes I'm the daughter. But through it all, we've been on this journey of life. So celebrating my mother for all of her accomplishments means the world to me.
So your mom,
your mom, the highlight of my life.
Your mom is like your best friend.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what did a lot of people say as you were growing up? Did they say, like, is she your older sister or something?
Because my mother is fine. Okay, my mama look good. So people still does not when she tells people that she has an adult child at this big old age, that I like, you look so young. So I always had the cool young mom. And so I took pride in that.
Oh man, I could only imagine the stories.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you got the friends, and then you got the boys, of course, in the neighborhood, probably trying to.
Yeah,
oh, I'd love to be with your mama. I love.
Yeah, absolutely. Mama. That's exactly how it went down.
You're like, shut up. And they were probably like, I'm about to be your daddy or something like that, some crazy stuff.
You're right on. You probably was in the community saying that. Look,
no, I would never.
You would have been
never do such a thing. I'm a good guy. I'd never do that. Come on now.
Yes.
But I've seen it enough times growing up. I mean, people that, you know, have that young looking mom that everybody's talking about, like, yeah, I'd love to be your daddy.
Yeah, that's exactly
Especially when you play sports, man, to be on a football team. Somebody's got the good looking mom. It's all you hear in the locker rooms. Ooh, did I let that one slip?
Absolutely.
But okay, so you graduated. What did you actually major in?
So I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in social work. And when people ask me, yo, it was the craziest thing when I went to declare my major. I had a guidance counselor tell me, like, Myesha, you shouldn't be a social worker because you're not going to make a lot of money and you're going to end up paying more for your education than you'll ever make in a salary. And like as a young adult, I'm just there like, yo, what do you mean? Like I want to be a social worker. But when I shared to her my story, again, shout out to you for creating this platform. The reason why I wanted social worker is because my mother, again, like I said, had me at age 16. We depended on a case manager for the county to help support us. Like we had county benefits, so like insurance and food stamps and housing vouchers and clothes vouchers. So all of those things allowed my mother to be the best mother that she could be at age 16. So I felt like I wanted to give back. I felt like I was indebted to the community or to the county because they allowed my mother the resources that she needed to be a young mother and to care for me. So that's the reason why I went into social work. And so I had to share that with her. Like, this is bigger than money. Although I want to make a lot of money, but I also want to make a greater impact for any teenage mothers who were in the same situation as my mother to be able to care for their children.
And that's amazing. Your mom was your motivation to get into, your career.
Yeah.
She really pushed you into it. And so when you first got into it, what was it like? Was it easy for you?
Thinking about going. Say it one more time.
I said, when you first got into your career, because your mom motivated you into it, what was it like?
So the thing about social work is that it's a lot of, you're bringing a lot of your lived and shared experiences to the work. So it's easy to have like trauma bonds, like, oh, your mom had you young. Oh, you grew up in Cleveland. Oh, like, so the work was easy because I was from the community. Our stories were similar, and it's about relationships. And because I'm really big on like relationships and community, it was easy for me to do the work, but it was also hard too. Because I saw the lack of resources that the families had. Like I was a social worker for people, young adults that had AIDS and HIV. I was a social worker for young adults who were literally homeless. I was a social worker for children who were living in residential facilities due for whatever reasons. And then I was just a social worker for kids that were in school that had behavioral and educational concerns. And so all of that and knowing the barriers that they have or the lack of resources or the family dynamics, says I will for the child, for those who cared about them. And you can get like a high level of burnout, like compassion fatigue. Like you can want it so bad for individuals and families. And for whatever reason, a lot of them weren't ready to change. And what I did learn during my years in direct practice is that you can't want it more than somebody else. You can only help people help themselves. And the thing about working with children is that they're in situations that impact them, but they can't make the decision. So really trying to encourage children to, listen to their parents, to listen to their teachers, to be on their best behaviors when they really didn't have. But it will be a reaction to not getting their needs met, right? Like people not listening to them or their family not providing for them. So how do I encourage them within this 1 hour, 1 or 2 hours a week when they have to be within those spaces that they did not feel safe or heard or seen? It was a really hard job. And that was one of the reasons why I had to step back. Because if I could, I would just want to save everybody. And I knew I couldn't do it by myself. So I had to make a pivot. And I did.
What would you say, like, out of all the people that you've been with, what was the one that hit you the hardest?
It's so many. I think so when I was a therapist for young adults who were literally homeless, it was a young lady. And she was in and out of foster care her whole life. And then when she aged out, she didn't have no family or any supports. So I remember her sharing, like, I would literally do stuff to harm myself so that I can go to the hospital, so that I can have a safe place and food, or steal from a store so that I can get caught and go to jail so that I can have a safe place and food. And when I think about that story, even now, to think about people who just don't have access to resources, um, and the things that they do that will forever follow them, right? So, like, now she, people are thinking that she wants to commit suicide or self-harm when she was really doing it to survive, or her being viewed as criminal or violent when she was just trying to get her needs met, right? Stealing two things that go together. Like, if somebody is stealing cereal and milk, then you should know that they're hungry. And instead of incarcerating them, which she wanted to, how about, what would it look like to connect them to a food pantry so that she can get her needs met? But also, what does it look like to have transitional housing for young adults who are homeless, who are aging out of foster care, instead of throwing them back into a community and they already felt unloved and unwanted? So I think that was one of the stories that we're unaware of, the sacrifices or the choices that people make just to feel safe and get their needs met. And although this may seem extreme, there are so many people that do that, especially in the colder months when homelessness is at an all-time high. And Cleveland we've been blessed to have decent winters, but
especially over the last couple of
that
years.
is not, that people are really living outside freezing cold. And again, people do what they have to do to survive. And for her, it was self-harm and criminal behavior so that she can be in places where she can get her needs met.
And just kind of rewind that for a minute. Think about that for a minute, you guys in the audience. It's like how often we are quick to judge people for, just the littlest things that we don't really think about that person. Like she said, this person's getting arrested, but at the same time, what is she stealing? Cereal and milk. And a lot of people are not thinking twice about it because it's like, it's not them. It's not, it's not nobody they know. But if you really just kind of, like, I was thinking about that as you said that, it's like, wow, that is kind of true. Nobody really looks at it like that. Like, she's stealing cereal and milk because she's trying to survive. She's homeless. She's on the streets by herself. And then at the same time, you get people that are harming themselves. What's the reason behind it? For this lady, she's harming herself because she wants somewhere to lay her head at night and be safe. And it's getting her labeled crazy and suicidal, but to her, it's helping her get somewhere safe for the night. Yeah. Even if that means going to jail, and that says a whole lot.
Yeah.
I mean, that I see like how like it, this is the kind of work you have to be around all the time, and it's like, how do you keep yourself, under control after dealing with that stuff? I know because the inner you wants to jump out, like, I want to help you. Let me do something. What goes on there? How do you do it? How do you control it?
I think there's like two things, right? I had a really amazing childhood to me, but as I shared earlier, like, you don't really know that you're in a struggle until somebody sheds light on it, right? Like, so there were things that in my childhood that I never knew was an issue until somebody made it an issue. So having that relatability with people and understand why they make the decisions and choices that they do. When I think about wellness and mental relief for myself, it's like remembering where I came from, right? Like remembering that my mother or my family was one time in those situations where they had to choose the best of two horrible options to make ends meet or to survive. So I remember those moments. And then also now being a mom, just knowing that I'm able to eliminate as many barriers for my children as I possibly can, and understanding my privilege there, but also being able to know where I came from and how do I continue to show up for those whose story was similar to mine, or where I can find similarities in their story. So it's a lot of reflection for me. Like, it's a lot of, I'm grateful for where I am, but I remember where I were, and how do I hold space for both of them? And I find the greatest relief in where I am now, and continue to work hard in my advocacy so that I can continue to show up for, the inner child or where I used to be. So it's hard, I guess, because I don't want to ramble too much, but I guess it's hard to find how to keep yourself the most sane when this is the reality. Like, these stories are attached to people's lives, and it's not as easy to shut it off, because you know that one or two things can happen. They can survive the struggle, or they can die as a result of it. So the mental process is always on. It's just like, yo, what can I do to at least make this one night great? And it's all like, my wheels are always spinning for those people whose stories I know, and how can I best support them. So I guess I'm still trying to figure that out. I said a lot to say. I don't know. Whatever I'm doing, I think I'm doing my best.
To me, I don't know. I'm kind of different from a lot of people. In this kind of situation, if I was in your line of work, I would be turning to God all the time. I'd find some prayer time, and I'd kind of like, okay, Lord, you got me in this line of work for a reason, for a purpose. And you're putting these people in my life for a reason.
Yeah.
You're showing me these beautiful stories, these heartfelt stories. What do you want me to do about it, Lord?
Yeah.
How can I help? How can I make the impact in my community? Because you're pointing out to me what's going on around me.
Yeah.
And it's touching me in my heart, because I want to do more for these people. What can I do? And a lot of people I know that were probably listening and watching, they're probably thinking like, I can't really do nothing. I'm on my ends meet right now.
Yeah.
Trust me, the Lord knows He can do stuff with you. Just got to give Him the opportunity, that window. You want to make a difference in the world? Yeah. There you go. Let it happen. Just listen to that voice, that still small voice, as they say. That'll direct you.
I appreciate you bringing faith up. Faith is a very big part, right? Like, sometimes I just like, oh, Lord, this is heavy. Similar to you, like, this is heavy. Like, I just wish that you give this family the strength. But one thing that I would say is that believing that my faith is enough, but understand that there's a lot of people who realities are really unfortunate, that faith is too much of a risk to have, right? And like, there's people that are tired of praying. There's people that are, it's like, I don't need your thoughts and your prayers. I need money. I need resources. I need housing. I need a safe community. So it's really trying to get people to be hopeful again, trying to get them to be faithful again. But because everybody wants something right away, like, what would I get right now? Like, and one thing that I do know about Jesus and whoever other people that are listening worship is that he may not come when you want him to, but he's right on time. And a lot of people don't have the time to wait for when that blessing will come or the lesson is learned. But faith is a really big part of what I do. So we haven't talked about it now. The work that I do now is in gun violence prevention. There's so much. God, please don't let another child, not one more mother cry, not one more father go to jail, not one more community be shot up. It's all prayer. It's all faith. So I appreciate you creating space to share the love of God and the power of prayer and faith, because that literally is one of the biggest reasons. But I always try to respect people's space, not knowing. So I appreciate you creating a space for me to share that.
No problem. I'm not afraid to show it. Because like, even when you were just talking just now, I could kind of hear it. It's like, Chris, in those moments, what you got to do is just pray, plant your seed. Yeah. That person doesn't necessarily need to hear you say it, but allow me to do my work.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens a lot of times, is our ego kind of gets in the way. And what I mean by ego is we want to do something. We want to make the impact. Mm-hmm. And you know what ego stands for, right?
Tell me.
Edging God out. Edging God out. We want to do what God's job is to do, what He's supposed to do. But in reality, all we're supposed to do is plant the seed. Pray for that person. You see somebody struggling hard, and you want to help that person. Yes, sure, everybody does. Everybody wants to jump in that. That's just in your spirit. That's how God created us. Yeah. But He says, my child, let me do it. I'm showing you this, but at the same time, let me do my job. Let me do my works. Plant the seed, and I'll do it. And I'll make it grow, man. You'll see it blossom. Pray for that person.
Yeah.
And when he told me that when I was younger, when I was on the road, like I said, I was traveling all over the place. I would see people left and right. So what I ended up started doing, because I read the book, The Power of Positive Thinking, and there was a talk about this. Like there was a preacher that said everywhere he would go, he would pray for somebody. He would pray, and like instantly the person would turn behind him and look right at him and smile, because I guess they felt the God power, that blessing come upon them. And ever since I read that, I'm not all the time, but I do it wherever I go. I try to remember it. Is every time I see somebody or come across somebody, I like to pray for them.
Yeah.
Say a little prayer for them, because, like you said, we never know what's going on in somebody's life, what they're dealing with, what's happening, But I feel like a little bit of that prayer power can go a long way for that person. I'm getting kind of deep over here in prayer.
No, you're good.
Preaching.
I appreciate you sharing your heart.
But if you guys want to try it, go out there. I mean, it might even change who you are as a person. It might make you feel a little different. Next time, or even, if you're going to work tonight or tomorrow morning, you're just taking a walk, just pray. You see somebody walking by, you don't know what to say, just say, Lord, do your work on that person. Do something for that person. I don't know what's going on in that person's life right now, but I know they need your love more than anything. They want to feel you around them. And even as I say that, I get a little bit of chills. Because I know it's true. Like, even she's out there in Chicago right now. And I just want to say thank you, Lord, for allowing her to get to this platform, to be able to get on the other side of this camera and be able to share her story. Because I know this world's crazy at times. But thank you for allowing her to have a safe trip here, a nice, safe hotel room to go into. Looks nice, by the way. Thank you for this ability to just have these good quality cameras to make this even possible, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Oh, the producer is handing me questions. Let's see what we got here. He's like, you're getting a little off topic. Okay. All right. I'll read them. It says, can you share with us your journey from your early career experiences to become the executive director at Cleveland Peacemakers? She hasn't even talked about that yet.
So, thank you, producer, and I'll say a prayer for you. So, again, I started off as a direct practice in social work. And as I was sharing earlier, that the weight of social work was so heavy, right? Like it was the stories, the lives, the families. And it just felt like there was just never enough. And I don't know about you all, but oftentimes we're just like, yo, I did my best. I brought the best resources. I tried to figure it out. And families can really say, I appreciate your help, but no, I'm not doing it. And it's just like, this is the best thing for you. And like, you wanted it more than them. So like, I found myself like, turned out, it made me feel like, yo, why did God choose this to be their story? Like, it just seemed like they're trying, and it was just so much questioning. And I was just like, well, maybe I just need to take a step back. So then I got the opportunity in 2019 to come to Cleveland Peacemakers Alliance as a case manager supervisor. And I was like, okay, well, I'll try it out. And before then, I've never really focused on gun violence. It was just a lot. And so when I got there, 2019, 2020, I ended up becoming a transition manager because leadership changed right away. So first time executive director. And I was always been an employee. I've never been a boss. So let's just see how this goes. And I'm still occupying that seat. But when I questioned myself, I was like, why am I doing this work? I've never been impacted by gun violence. I don't even know what's going on. But I have been. So I was in 7th grade. My mom dated a guy. He was in the streets. And one day it was me, my mother, my brother, my sister at home, and my brother was downstairs. And we heard this loud bump. And I was like, what the hell is that? You know, and my brother was downstairs, so was my brother. So guys, boys bump all the time. So I was like, well, he's probably down there doing something crazy. So someone was coming up the stairs, and I was like, I'm seeing something, but I don't really see anything. And before I know it, I had a semi-automatic gun to the back of my head, and this guy was screaming out, "Give us the money!" And when I was a kid, my father used to give me $100 every Friday for child support, and I was so happy. And I was scared and crying, and I remember hearing my mother cry out like, "Don't kill my kids, just you can kill me. Like we don't have any money." And the guy didn't want my $100, but I just remember them like tearing our house up, looking for money, having these big shiny guns pointed to me and my family. And I'm glad to say that all of us made it out physically safe. But to this day, mentally and emotionally, we're still scarred from that, right? Like there's moments where I'm scared to be at home by myself, or keeping the lights off at every bump. I'm thinking like, what in the hell is this? But I suppressed that moment so deep that I forgot about it, and I made myself believe that that wasn't a part of my story. So now I'm showing up in the gun violence prevention space that said it could have been me. Like I could have lost my life.
Yeah.
And so I show up in this space of gun violence prevention a lot differently. Not that it didn't matter before, but I'm not too far removed from those people who are being impacted indirectly or directly by gun violence, because it can be any one of us that lose our life. So that's how I got connected to Cleveland Peacemakers. And 4 years later, I'm still here advocating and amplifying the message of living in peace before resting in peace, and investing in communities that have been divested in for years, to give them the resources that they need so that they don't feel like they have to rob, kill, or steal to get their needs met.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I know that is really tough to bring up at times too. And I just want to praise God, though, for keeping you alive in that situation, because I could only imagine what was going through you guys, especially after they left. What did your mom say, just to keep you guys like, it's okay. It's like, how do you come back from that? How do you bounce back?
It was so scary. We ended up moving out of the house immediately after we went to our grandmother's house with my mom. It was hard for the four of us to be separate for a very long time. In that moment, and I wasn't a mom then, of course, but I remember my mom saying, be just willingly to give her life for her children. And it reminded me of God, right? Like being able to give it. So it's just, like in that moment, I was thinking, even in fears, like I never want to have children, because I never want to say that, like, kill me, like take me. But and now, like even remembering that and hearing that now, reflecting on it in this moment, is saying that even though I do not want to die, I want my children to live. And what am I willing to give? And sometimes, even to this day, people are willing to give their lives. So I just, again, another reason to celebrate and honor my mom, to be so brave to say, I don't know what is going to happen, but if anything happens, allow it to happen to me.
Yeah, and not only that, but also, your mom's a very good-looking lady. I'm glad nothing else happened there either. Think about that.
Absolutely.
I should be laughing, but I mean, especially in that situation, they're looking around, crashing your house. Anything could have happened in that moment, right? And I mean, it could have happened in front of you. So praise God once again that nothing crazy like that happened. And your mom was willing to, like you said, Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, did the ultimate price for us and showed us and set by example that, he gave up his life for us. Just in case nobody understood what you were talking about. But, I mean, to be in that same position, it's easier said than done to say, yeah, I want to be the hero. But like you said, your mom was in that situation, and there was nothing more than she wanted is to see you guys alive. Like, take my life. Don't take my babies. Take my life. Let them live. Let them enjoy the rest of their lives, Although that would have, been more trauma to you guys, now I think about it, because you would have witnessed firsthand your mom being killed in front of you. And then you'd forever never have any trust at all. So, again, thank God. Thank God. And that now that you're in the Peacemakers too, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Just from that moment, you're like, yeah, I don't want that to ever be in anybody else's situation. Nope.
Not at all.
All right. Next question. I'm going. But no, you saw it coming. Tell us about the work you do with counseling for the culture of with my homegirls.
Oh, nice. So counseling for the culture is a private practice that I founded because oftentimes people say that Black people aren't into therapy, and the reality is that that's not the case. If you ever been around a bunch of Black people, all we want to do is talk, talk about
Good
what's going
time.
on, like have a good time, laugh at our pain. So that's not the reality. And what I wanted to do is to debunk that stigma and to say one of the reasons why a lot of Black people aren't in therapy is because a lot of practitioners don't look like us. And oftentimes we're teaching other people and other races how to help us. And if your job is to help and you're not culturally competent or sensitive, then it's draining because I can just, go to somebody else in my family, and from their perspective, they can help me deal with whatever I have to deal with. So in creating counseling for the culture, I wanted to be sensitive to that. Like I wanted to create a space where Black people can come and receive counseling with somebody who's culturally competent, with somebody that looks like them, that have lived and shared experiences, but also had an education to be able to support them through academia. So Healing with My Homegirls is actually in 2020, I got a divorce. And when I got a divorce, a lot of my friends and family were supporting and trying to support me in ways that I just was not, like, I didn't want, right? Like pointing a finger, who's to blame. And so I was just like, what would it look like to create the support that I need? So I took maybe like 6 of my closest homegirls. We went to a cabin, and instead of focusing on my pain, we collectively focus on where all of us may be experiencing some type of pain. And through group therapy, we created a conversation to foster collective healing. And in 2023, this year, the NAACP, the Cleveland branch, honored me as an unsung hero for Healing with My Homegirls. And I just look back to say, like, that was probably one of my hardest moments in my adult life, that I was able to turn my pain into passion, to be able to help other women collectively heal, to not feel isolated, and to get the support that they need through group therapy.
Now, what would you say inspired you to get involved?
The inspiration to create Healing with My Homegirls was because my homegirls wanted to support me and they just did not know how. And so giving them my opportunity to help me by also helping them. So I always tell them whenever I'm helping them heal, I'm also healing. So it's just like a continuation of healing spaces, safe spaces, and sisterhood. So that was it.
I know you want. Yeah, you think I'm gonna say it, but it's the truth. Well, I mean, it's just Jesus, that Holy Spirit, that connection, man. That's what's going on there. I mean, a lot of people, it's there. She's making it too easy for me. All right. In your role as the executive director, you're working toward creating a safer community. Can you share some of the challenges you face and the success you have achieved?
That's a great question. A lot of the successes is that we're prolonging the lives of those people who feel like they won't live past 15 or 18 or 25 or 30. I will share a data point really quickly. Like the number one cause of premature death for all kids and teens in the country is gun violence. And since 2006, the number one cause of death for Black boys have been gun violence. The number 2 cause of premature death for Black women is gun violence. So when you think about those data facts, working in gun violence prevention is bigger than a bullet. Like, what are the social drivers that are leading to people being on either side of the gun, and what resources do they need outside of violence to get their needs met? So a few challenges have been like there's not enough funding into community violence intervention. Oftentimes when people think about community safety, they think about law enforcement. But they don't think about an alternative or complement to law enforcement, which is community people. There's one thing that says if you're those who are most proximate to the pain is closest to the solution. So investing in community to create the solutions to make community safe. Another thing that I shared earlier is that a lot of people are hopeless, and there's a pastor, Mike McBride, said hopelessness is more deadly than a bullet. Where there's not hope, fear can exist, and when people are fearful, oftentimes they'll go and get a gun because they feel like guns make them safe, and that's the furthest thing from the truth. So it's changing the mindset of those who believe that guns create safety. Changing the mindset of those people who believe by any means necessary. Changing the mindsets of people who do not believe in this resolving conflict through mediation and de-escalation. Um, but a challenge, a success is that a cool part of the job that I do, non-traditional work, is that I hire people who have been system impacted. I hire people who have once been the drivers of violence in their community so that they can go back into these same spaces and say, yo, I was once on that side. Like I once took a life. I once was gang involved, and here I am in debt to my community, and I want to be able to support you so that you don't have to go down any of the same big roads that I went down. So that's one thing that I love, which is a success, is that I'm helping those who are reformed to come back into their community to help build it up brick by brick because they tore it down brick by brick. So um, having so many successes of my staff being able to change the lives of and be the person that they needed as a kid to young people.
And I was just thinking as you were telling that, reflect on it, is I just heard, I just had a guest actually just on recently, Melva Davis, who had just told me about, kids are impacted growing up in the projects, in the inner cities. Like Cleveland, they have a lot of projects, and that's where he was growing up. And in that area, it was so gang related. Gangs were there, and they would actually come to the door knocking, and they would actually recruit kids that are about 10 years of age. So when you mentioned that, kids at 16 are dying from gunshot wounds, and it kind of like hit me. I was like, wow, he was just talking about it. It was just
Yeah.
happening, to him. Luckily, his mom and dad were very, you're like, no, you ain't taking my baby, not
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah.
But for you, like you said, I like what you're doing because you're hiring people that can relate to it, that
Mm-hmm.
have been in that situation, have dealt with it, took somebody's life. That way, when somebody else is trying to get themselves together and come clean and get away from that life, somebody knows exactly what you're talking about, and that's awesome.
Absolutely. And then one thing that I would like to know is like this, it's like evolution of like community violence, right? Like in Cleveland, our biggest issue isn't gang related, is the cause for gun violence. Like we have neighborhood based cliques and crews, but I don't think that we have a really big gang problem. Although we do have some organized gangs, I think the biggest issue for gun violence in our city is interpersonal conflict, right? Like if I was sitting by you, which I never would, and I punch you and you are upset, you have the option to pick up a gun and shoot and potentially kill me. Where probably at one point in their life, it'd be like, why would you hit me? And we will be able to talk it out, or we will be able to fight. Now it's just like not just young people, because research shows that the average shooter is age 27. So not just young people, but those who are older too. I think they just want to hurry up and rid themselves of the problem, and the easiest way is to shoot and kill somebody. And unfortunately, that should not at all be the only way. We should go back to trying to figure it out and talk it out so that we can save lives and keep families and communities strong. And unfortunately, we're in times where that's not the case anymore, and people are shooting more than they are having conversations.
Yeah, when I hear that, just the talk about it, it makes me think like, honestly, I get it. I understand to protect your family and whatnot, but I know it's coming. Being a, a religious guy, a faithful guy, having that relationship, I just couldn't see myself taking somebody else's life. Regardless of, I hear you guys also talking like, what if they did something to your family? Wouldn't you want to get that vengeance, that revenge on them?
Yeah.
And even though, you know, they did something like that, I would forgive them. But I couldn't live with that on my conscience of taking somebody's life.
It's so like just to connect this point. I was at Dollar Tree and I had birthday balloons coming out, and this guy who was out soliciting his CD was like, "Oh, you got me balloons for my birthday," and I was just like, "Oh!" So I started singing "Happy Birthday" to him, even though that it wasn't his birthday. So he asked me what did I do, and I had a pin on my shirt that said "It's the guns." And so I told him what I did, and he said, "Oh, 3 months ago, somebody shot and killed my son." And everybody was calling my phone because there was no way that it should have been my son that was shot. They were thinking that it probably was me. And he said, he's a pastor. He said, I had people that told me that the person that killed my son was like, it will be handled, right? A life for a life, that they were going to handle it. And he's a pastor. He said, I don't want y'all to do that. Like, even like I'm hurting, I'm upset, I'm angry. I don't want you to take another person's life. And so that connected me to your point, because a lot of people that are being impacted, they aren't of pastors, or they're not pastor kids or children. So the reality is that if you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you. Hurt people, hurt people. So a big part of my job at Cleveland Peacemakers is how do we reduce the chances of retaliation? And we try our best to mediate conflicts. We never justify violence, no matter how hard it is, no matter who have been shot. We deal with the most immediate crisis, and we say, what do you need to feel the most safe, while we figure out what next steps are? And in that moment, some people are saying, I just want to get whoever did this. And I said, well, I know that those are your true feelings, but right now we got to figure out the burial process for your child or your loved one. Mm-hmm. Can we handle this? So making sure to valid, like to hold space for what they're feeling, but to also redirect them to like, let's deal with the most immediate needs now, with hopes that their mindset will go from hurt to eventually processing the healing component of it, and the acknowledgement that their life is forever changed, but with the right supports that we can create some normalcy for you. Not saying that it's going to be easy, but our goal is to reduce retaliation by any means necessary.
And think about that just for a moment. I mean, I know the person that's watching this right now, you're dealing with something like this, and you're kind of looking at us like, well, you guys don't know that, you don't know this pain, you don't know what's going on. But I can tell you someone that does. God, you know, gave his own son to the world for us, for all of us. You know, he came into the world just to preach the truth, and he did nothing wrong. He was just telling us that the way we was living was wrong, and we just wanted us to straighten us out, so that we could live successful lives and live peaceful lives, live life right. And I've hated them for that, because their ways were wrong, and they didn't want to change. So what they do, they took out the one and only son. And doing that, I mean, could you imagine how God felt? What was going on? He was feeling the same stuff that you're feeling right now. Yeah. So right now, I just talk to him, because I know you're saying, Lord, why my son? Why my baby? But for every reason, I mean, God's there. God's working. Just talk to him. He wants to hear your prayer. Jesus would go on to, you know, he saved us. He died for us. I mean, it didn't make sense at the time, and I could only imagine what was going through everybody's mind, especially the people that were following him, the apostles, the people he recruited. You know, you're just imagine living in that time period. You're like, oh, I love hearing this guy. This guy, he's so motivational, so upbeat all the time. I love hearing what he's got to say. And then when you seen him on that cross, crucified, you're probably like, dang, I'm going to miss that guy because he was awesome. But then imagine 3 days later, you hear about this guy's back. And then all of a sudden you see this guy. So everything he told you, he wasn't lying. For everything, there's a reason.
Yeah.
I can't be the preacher on that one. But all I can say is talk to God. And he'll point you in the right direction. All right, I'm done. That's all I said on that one. Okay. Okay. How do you balance your roles as a community leader, a founder, and a creator while still managing your own well-being?
I haven't figured it out yet. I'm still trying to figure it out. But what I can say is that everything is centered around me being a mom. And I want to be the best mom to my daughters as I possibly can. So, in doing that, I know that I have to take time to fill my cup, and I know that I have to take time to rest. But what I will say is that I've built relationships with people around the community that if I cannot, they can. And in my absence, people are still doing life saving work. There are some days that are a lot heavier than others. Like last week was a very hard week. I think of all of the gunshot victims in the city of Cleveland, maybe like 5 of them was people under the age of 18. And every life lost is hard. But we had a 3-year-old that lost his life in the city of Cleveland. And in moments like that, there's no balance. Like you feel what you feel, your heart breaks, fear creeps in, hopelessness creeps in, anger creeps in, and you just really got to figure out like what is going on. Why are people so cruel? Why are people choosing gun violence? All of these senseless killings. But what I have learned is that prior to working in the space of gun violence prevention, my cell phone used to be my favorite thing. And I would get alerts. I would be like, oh, somebody's texting me. Somebody's thinking about me. Now when I get alerts, it's letting me know that somebody was shot, that somebody might have died, that my team needs to go to the hospital or the communities to support the families. So now when I used to find balance in my cell phone and on social media, even these spaces are now being polluted with gun violence and pictures of people and all of this ill treatment in the communities. So I'm still learning, but I will do whatever I can to be a good mom. And sometimes motherhood grounds me and pushes me into spaces where I need to rest. And I'm grateful for my daughters for being able to create that for me as I'm still trying to figure it out for myself.
Here's my advice. I would say at least try this. Unplug. Take a walk, just go out there and then kind of look around you. Just look at the beauty that is all around you. I know it's easier said than done, but try it once. Go out there one day, just unplug from everything. I'm not saying leave your phone at the house.
Yeah.
Put it on silent if you have to. Just go out there. Just go out there and just take a walk.
Yeah.
Take a walk and just look at the beauty all around you. And then do like I said earlier, do like you see somebody walking, pray for that person.
Yeah.
Pray for that person. Okay, can you share any particular impact moment or story from your work that has stayed with you? She actually said that already.
Mm-hmm.
We'll actually go to the next one. What advice do you have for individuals who are inspired to make a positive impact in their communities just like you have?
I would say just do it. Like we don't have to have everything that we need to create an impact. All you have to do is just be consistent, um, have the desire to want to change, and know that change can either be big or small. Like impact can be seen or unseen, big or small. Like just continue to do something. There was an old lady, a seasoned woman, who knew that there was kids hungry on her street. And what she would do is that she would take extra money that she had and make a big pot of something to feed these children. Now, someone can listen to this and say, well, what did that have to do with creating an impact? When you have children that are hungry, as a story I shared earlier, you can have people that are doing criminal behavior and they're not criminal, but they're hungry. A lot of communities in the city of Cleveland have food deserts. They're red line, like they're all of the things. So ensuring that woman, that seasoned woman, taking time and money from her pockets to say, let me feed these kids, because I know that if they have this meal, maybe they'll be less likely to do something that can cause them to either not be alive or free. And so that's something that she would do traditionally. She cooks. So it's nothing that she has to create, or like It's nothing that's not already inside of her. So think about the God-given talents and gifts that you have that can make somebody else's life better or a community better, and then just do it. And when you're consistent, there'll be other people that'll say, you know what, Myesha, I see you out here every Friday cleaning up the community. I'm going to come out there on Friday to help you. And before you know it, an idea of one becomes a movement of many, because they too want to create impact, and they probably were just scared to start. So be the brave one to say, I'm going to just start. I'm just going to start, and the momentum will build and people will come. But just start and know that whatever you do is enough, and that there will be impact attached to it.
It only takes one person.
That's it.
That's all you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
So for you that's watching, go out there and make it happen. Show off that greatness.
Yes.
You know, and if you know, you're like talking about with Chris, what are you talking about? Greatness. You got greatness within inside you. You know that thing that you love doing, that passion that you just find yourself drawn to all the time. That's your gift.
Yeah.
Go out there and show it to the world. Stop being afraid. Stop being so shy.
Mm-hmm.
Show off that gift to the world. And before you know it, that very gift of your own is going to blossom. So get out there and do your thing. All right, next question. How important is self-care in the work you do?
Self-care is important. Is very, very important. Even though you don't always get it. Well, for myself, let me speak for myself. Self-care is very important to me, although sometimes it's not a priority. Like, I know the importance of it. I absolutely do. But depending on my workload, sometimes it's secondary. But when I'm able to take a break and take a step back, I take advantage of it. Like, I like to travel. I like being by water. I like to binge watch my favorite shows whenever I can. I like cuddling with my daughters. I like walking. But what I'm trying to do is figure out how to implement these things into my daily lifestyle, so it's always a moment of self-care and it's not something that's scheduled. So I may or may not be doing a little bit better on those things, because I know it's needed. Sometimes when you're in community works, sacrificing things is the easiest thing to do. Like, oh, I'm not going to take this walk because I need to answer all these emails. And when you think about a walk can only be like 30 to 45 minutes, you'll still have time in your day to answer the email. So getting out of the mindset of like everything is urgent is something that I'm learning to do. So yeah.
It takes time. It takes time.
Yeah.
All right. Tell us about a book, quote, or even a mentor who has had an awesome influence on your journey. I already know the answer to that because you said it earlier. Anybody that's been watching this story should already know it's your mom.
It's my mama. Shout out to my mother. I was in a training today because I got accepted to the University of Chicago. They have the first of its kind, a community violence intervention leadership academy. So for everybody around the country who is doing this work to professionalize it, the University of Chicago created this program for us. So that's why I'm here. But a quote that was in our training today was by Maya Angelou. And it said, where's my notebook? It said, when you know better, you do better, right? Like, so when you know better, you do better. And sometimes people just don't know. So until you do, when you do, look, I'm messing it up. Basically, if you know better, you should do better. But if you don't know, then just keep on trying. And that's wrong. So I'm not going to quote Maya Angelou because I don't think that she would enjoy that, me messing up her, misquoting her. So I would just say again, shout out to my mom because I can't find it. I cannot find the quote. I'm going to have to email it to you after this.
Okay. We'll put that in the side notes. Take two.
Take two.
All right. Okay, you kind of did just touch on it. What's next on your journey? Are there any upcoming projects that you're excited about?
Yeah, so next on my journey is that I want to apply to the Ohio State University to get my PhD in public health. I do believe everything is a public health crisis, especially gun violence. And I think talking about it from that level of research will allow people to look at the root causes that leads to gun violence, and invest in those things to give people alternatives to making decisions that put them at risk of not being alive or free. So that's what's next for me is to apply for a PhD program.
All right, as we begin to wrap this thing up, I just simply want to say thank you for telling your story. How does it feel?
It feels good. It feels good to be the person on the other side, because oftentimes I'm asking people to tell their story and how I can support them. So it feels good to be able to share.
All right, for the last little bit of this, I hand the mic over to you. And now you kind of, like you said, you kind of do what you work. I'll let you have 3 questions. You can ask me 3 questions. I'll answer them as best as I can.
Okay. Out of all of the stories you've heard from a young person into an adult, what is a story that sticks with you the most?
See, that's a tough one to answer, to be honest, because for me, I have to say all of them. I mean, I find all of our stories, everybody that I've had on so far, it's kind of crazy, but in a way, we're all kind of in this life together. We're kind of dealing with the same stuff in a way. We're kind of trying to figure out life in itself. I don't know if that answers the question, but everybody's story has been very unique and has been really just learning from them and kind of seeing a similarity in my own life story. And it just makes me more interested in hearing more and more stories. I just love hearing people's stories because I don't know, it makes me more. I feel closer to God too, because it shows that we're all in this life together.
That's a fact. That's a fact. Thank you for sharing that. Another question is that, in listening to people's stories, what are maybe like 2 or 3 things that you have implemented into your own life, whether that's like empathizing or a different way of thinking or a different way of asking questions, or listening to people?
Really, just looking all around us and seeing, like, like I said, everybody's got their own story. It helps me understand, like, everybody's dealing with their own thing in life. Everybody's going through their own battle. To never judge too quick or never judge at all, really. And just kind of like, I don't know, I feel like that love for everybody, that connection where I just want to, like I said earlier, I just want to help people. I just want to be like that. Because I know sometimes people feel like they don't have a voice to talk.
Yeah.
They're afraid to say what they want. And that's why I like building that relationship with people and letting people know it's like, hey, you do got a voice and you can show it and use it for your greater purpose.
And I think my last question is, where do you see your platform growing to in 2024?
I love to see it keep growing. I love to have more and more people come on here and tell their stories. But my ultimate goal is I've said it before, is I love to see this platform not just be just hearing people's stories, but eventually down the line, 20 years from now, when somebody wants to look up like one of their ancestors or something, when your great grandma or cousin or somebody, you want to know more about that person, what they were about, they can just type it in if Google still exists or something else. Then who knows how just how crazy stuff is. The world is all over the place. But if they can find this video or one of the stories from their family members, I think that would be truly awesome too.
I like that. Well, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to interview you on your podcast.
Yeah. How does it feel?
Good. Healing with my homeboys.
Healing with the homeboys. Like you see, look, you got already something else starting too. All right. As we wrap it up, say somebody wants to connect with you, get a hold of you somehow. How can they do that? How can they get in touch with you?
So I am on LinkedIn. Shout out to LinkedIn because I think that's where you found me. At Myesha Watkins. I am also on Instagram at my Watkins. So it's underscore my girl .my. So that's my Instagram. And I am on Twitter at my girl my with 2 Y's at the end.
All
And
right.
if anybody ever want to volunteer with Cleveland Peacemakers, feel free to email me at my first initial last name at CLEVEPEACE.org.
And in case everybody didn't get that, I will have her share that information with me afterwards, and I'll share it in a link. That way you can actually connect better. That way, if you didn't get it all down, I got you. No worries. No sweat.
Yes.
No sweat.
Yes.
But once again, thank you for coming on the platform and telling your story. It's
Thank
truly
you.
been an honor.
Thank you for creating a space.
And also for the people, the audience that are watching and listening right now, thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This is your host, Chris Baker. Thank you for listening to the story. Until next time, peace out.